Update 312. Thanks everyone for your input. I wanted to hear it, good and bad. I made an appointment with a therapist for the end of this week. I am working on a list of things I would like to see change, working on limiting his alcohol consumption, addressing his health issues, obesity, not avoiding difficult conversations, in addition to the intimacy issues, and will work with the therapist to figure out how to address them. A lot of what is going through my mind right now was the result of having 10 days to myself where he had to travel to Asia for work, and how happy and easy my life felt during that time. He was texting and calling constantly telling me how much he missed being home, while I was loving single life where I cooked whatever meals I wanted and went out where I wanted and went on hikes and had coffee with coworkers and hung out with my youngest, just the two of us. I was self-intimacy at least once a day and having amazing orgasms. If I had thrown casual intimacy into the mix in that time, I probably would have been the happiest I've been in years. When he got back, he looked like absolute shoot and said, "I never want to be apart that long again." We had intimacy within an hour of him coming home, and afterward he was blissed out and I was numb. I think that's when it hit me how much more he gets from our relationship. Whether we stay together or not, something needs to change. Throw away because I am pretty sure he knows my main account, me, F40s, met my husband, M40s, when we were in college, both from very conservative religious backgrounds, married super young and had 3 kids relatively quickly. The youngest will be an adult soon. To say I was sexually repressed would be an understatement. I didn't even have my first orgasm until I was 22 years old, and it was practically by accident. Intimacy with my husband has always been satisfactory. In the beginning especially, it was more about the intimacy and closeness and less about the act itself or getting off. My husband has, a hair trigger, and gets excited, and it's over, easily. Still to this day, over 20 years later. I think he's a premature ejaculator, but no official diagnosis or anything. So intimacy is often over quickly. He doesn't want to leave me hanging, so he will then try to get me off manually. But over 90% of the time, I just fake orgasms to get it over with because I know he can't get me there. He is not adventurous. He doesn't want to have oral intimacy, giving or receiving. He's okay with taking direction, but me just constantly telling him what to do turns into a mood unalived for me. Anytime I discuss working on our intimacy life, he shuts down. Based on an experience we had about 12 or 13 years ago where we went to therapy for something that happened, not related to our marriage, he will not entertain the thought of therapy. Not sure if it's because of the intimacy, but I'm only sometimes attracted to him. Some days I see him and I'm sure I have hearts in my eyes. Other times, especially in bed, I feel nothing. I have faked being asleep to avoid intimacy with him. Other times, I will initiate intimacy and basically use him like an intimacy toy, but I no longer feel any emotional connection. Aside from intimacy, our marriage is great. We raised wonderful humans. He loves and dotes on me. He still sends flowers to my work. He is patient and thoughtful and listens. He's affectionate and always wants hugs or cuddles. He has always been good about sharing housework and responsibilities. He's always been a super hands-on dad. My family loves him and his family loves me. We have a lot of shared hobbies and interests. I genuinely enjoy his company. I don't know if this is a midlife crisis, but I have a constant nagging thought that this is it, and I hate it. I've chosen to be married to him, which means I will never have a single enjoyable intimacy experience with another human being for the rest of my life. I am not an ultimatum person, and even if I gave him one, he's not going to magically turn into a good intimacy partner. I have the number of some divorce lawyers, and I'm thinking of calling them and just exploring. Sometimes the idea of being single is terrifying, and sometimes I think, it's not so bad. When I told my best friend, she flipped out. She said she would never speak with me again if I did this and that I'd lost my mind. She said it would be horrible and I would ruin a good man's life. Am I the idiot? Editing to add some details because people keep asking/commenting, yes, I own a vibrator. He does not want it used during intimacy. I have tried introducing corn. He is not open to it. I have been to therapy and will definitely be going again to a counselor. He is not open to it. I am not a convincing liar, and in most cases, he knows I'm faking orgasms. He frequently questions whether I just faked it. But he also now sees it as the signal for throwing in the towel and is okay to just stop there and cuddle. I have been blunt and open and honest about it. He shuts down. He will walk away or cry or sometimes say he's open to change, but then nothing will actually change. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Okay, for God's sake, quit faking it. Faking it doesn't benefit anyone. He thinks he's done a good job when in reality you're still frustrated. Have an honest conversation with him. Women have a horrible tendency to mentally check out of a relationship, not communicate with their husbands, and then be pissed when he doesn't fix the problem he doesn't know is there. Men are not mind readers. To him, things have been great the last 20 years. Don't break him over something that is potentially fixable like this. Toys can and will do wonders for that sort of thing. Comment 2. Look, it sounds like you have 95% of everything you could ever expect in a marriage. That's incredible. I think you owe it to yourself and your husband to 1. Make it clear that this is a huge issue. 2. Go to individual therapy. 3. Get him to agree to individual therapy. 4. Depending on how, 1 and 2, go get couples counseling. It sounds like you mostly have a great life, and I think with determination and effort you can find your way through this. Good luck. Now for the update, thanks everyone for your input. I wanted to hear it, good and bad. So I went to the therapist, and it was like opening Pandora's box. I laid out everything, my list in hand, ready to change my life. The therapist suggested I bring my husband in for a session, and after much convincing, he agreed. It was a disaster. He sat there, stone-faced, as I poured out my frustrations. When the therapist prodded him for his thoughts, he exploded, accusing me of being ungrateful and selfish. I was stunned into silence. The next day, he brought home a puppy, a golden retriever with a bow around its neck, as if a new pet could patch the gaping holes in our marriage. I couldn't help but smile at the puppy, but it felt like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Our kids were over the moon, and for a moment, our home was filled with something other than tension. But then my youngest found a text on his phone from a coworker, something more than friendly. I confronted him, and he brushed it off as nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I started to notice how late he stayed up, whispering on the phone, and how he'd quickly shut his laptop whenever I walked by. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I logged into his computer while he was asleep. Emails, chats, pictures. It was all there. An affair, clear as day. I felt like I was suffocating, trapped in a life I no longer recognized. I wanted to scream, to leave, but I thought of the kids, the puppy, the life we built. I convinced myself it was a one-time mistake, that we could move past it. I tried to talk to him about it, but he denied everything. He said I was imagining things, that I was the one destroying our marriage with my accusations and dissatisfaction. I wanted to believe him, to go back to the way things were, but deep down, I knew the truth. The next week, he had a health scare, chest pains that landed him in the hospital. It turned out to be a false alarm, but it shook us both. He promised to take better care of himself, to be a better husband. I clung to that promise like a lifeline. We started going on walks with the puppy, trying to rebuild our connection. He cut back on drinking, started eating healthier. I saw glimpses of the man I married, and I let hope creep in. But the intimacy was gone. Our intimacy life was still a one-sided affair, and I found myself avoiding his touch. I started spending more time at work, volunteering for extra projects, anything to stay busy. My coworker, the one I'd been having coffee with, became a confidant. He listened, offered support, and I found myself drawn to him. We kissed one night after work, and the guilt was immediate. I pulled away, knowing I couldn't go down that path. I came home to find my husband waiting up for me, a look of concern on his face. He asked if everything was okay, and I lied, said I was just stressed from work. He hugged me, and I felt nothing. I'm still here, in this life that doesn't fit me anymore. I see the way my husband tries, the small changes he's made, and I tell myself it's enough. But every night, as I lie awake next to him, I wonder if this is really all there is. Thanks for reading. My friend criticized my parenting and assaulted my toddler, so I kicked her out and filed a police report to ensure she faces the consequences for her unforgivable actions. Hey, I apologize for the unconventional formatting. Basically, I threw my friend out onto the streets because she tried to parent my child how she saw fit. I let my friend, whom we'll call Maddie, move in with me about 5 months ago because she had gotten kicked out of her parents' house for not having a job and lazing around 24/7. I'm 23 years old and she's 22. My child is 3 years old. Maddie has made sure I know every single day that she disagrees with my parenting choices completely. At first, I didn't really care. My child's father left before she was born, and I will parent my kid how I see fit. I don't practice gentle parenting, but I don't do tough love either. I'm somewhere in the middle. One morning, I made pancakes for everyone. Maddie sat at the table watching me as I offered the pancakes to my child. She blatantly refused the pancake, and I could sense a major tantrum coming. So I asked what she wanted for breakfast, and she ran and got Pringles. Okay, fine. I let her have the Pringles, and Maddie told me that my kid will grow up to be fat and lazy because I didn't force her to eat the food I made. I rolled my eyes and just simply let it go. Then the other day at the park, some kid pushed my daughter down the slide rather harshly. She was crying, and I went to comfort her and hold her. Maddie told me I was being soft, and I should have told my daughter to go punch the kid who pushed her down the slide. I told her to shut up and stop telling me to encourage violence with 3-year-old kids. Every day she would find something I did wrong to nitpick at. My daughter gets an hour on her iPad every day, and Maddie said I was rotting her brain. My kid throws a fit over some candy, like kids do. She tells me to make her stand in the corner with her arms out until she gets too tired to do it. My kid goes to bed at 8. That's obviously too late of a bedtime, and she should be sleeping at 6:30. It was literally everything, and I was getting beyond fed up. It came to a head when one day I realized I woke up late. I thought my daughter was still sleeping, which was unusual, but I brushed it off. Until I went downstairs into the playroom. It was an absolute disaster area, more so than usual, and Maddie was standing in front of my daughter, yelling in her face while my daughter sobbed. Then, to my horror, she reared back and slapped my kid. I flew into that room and dragged Maddie out basically by her hair to where my kid could no longer see us, and punched her multiple times. I was so enraged it wasn't even funny. I was seeing red. She looked really pissed when I finally got myself together and told her to go pack her things. She did it, especially when I threatened her I would smack her around again, and came downstairs with her things. I then made her leave, while she was begging me to let her stay because she had nowhere else to go. I slammed the door in her face. My daughter now has a huge, nasty bruise right on her cheek. It took a long time to console her, and at first, the slap had caused her skin to rise up so much I considered taking her to a doctor. So I guess I'm asking, am I the a-hole here? Update, hello all, I find it baffling how many people are being nasty about my parenting. Please keep in mind that for breakfast that one morning, she was refusing pancakes. She refused when I offered to make French toast. She refused yogurt with fruits. She refused eggs. She refused everything I had offered. I wasn't about to let her go hungry, so if she wanted Pringles one single morning, then absolutely she can have her Pringles. I don't let her have Pringles every single day, LOL. And she gets 1 hour of screen time so I can clean. She plays educational games recommended by her pediatrician. Sometimes I need that hour to do laundry or to tidy up the entire house. I am a single mother with a very energetic baby. Anyways, back to Maddie. After she left, my baby was inconsolable. I took a picture of the mark right after Maddie left. I then just tried to soothe my baby. She ate some avocado toast and some grapes. But she was still incredibly upset, so I just held her. I was overwhelmed, I will admit. Around 2 p.m., 3 hours after Maddie left, my baby was mostly back to her normal self. So I snapped another picture, and then we were off to the doctor. I told him what happened, showed him the before picture, and he told me to call the police while I was in his office, so I did. After we got done at the doctor's, I drove down and filed a report. I also have a camera in my daughter's playroom for her safety, so I saved the footage onto my phone and offered it to the cops. I have filed a restraining order and am in the process of trying to press charges. My baby is okay now. This morning she ate like a wild animal, not Pringles, and then wanted to go swimming, so we did. She is okay. I appreciate all the concern and comments giving me advice. Maddie will never be around my child again for as long as I live. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot. That woman isn't your friend. She beat your child. You should press charges, to be honest. I know everybody makes mistakes, but when it comes to other people's children, forgiveness shouldn't be expected under any circumstances. I hope this won't traumatize your daughter too much, but you should learn from this and never bring people around who might harm your child, even if it is just a hunch. Follow it. Comment 2. Not the idiot. I would have called the cops and pressed charges. The child is 3. What could a 3-year-old possibly do to warrant being smacked? I have a 1-year-old at the moment, and I can't imagine using harsh punishments on him. Trust me, I get shoot thrown at my head on a regular basis, but violence won't solve it. I also work as a dog trainer, and violence doesn't train a dog either. Now, for the update. Thank you for sticking with me through this. So, after the whole Maddie disaster, things got even messier. I thought I'd seen the last of her, but nope, she had the nerve to show up at my doorstep again. This time, she was all tears and apologies, saying she had nowhere to go and had learned her lesson. But I wasn't having any of it. I told her straight up, "You hit my child, there's no coming back from that." I shut the door on her pleading face, and that felt like some kind of victory, but it was short-lived. The next day, I got a call from my mom. She'd heard about the incident from Maddie, of all people. Maddie had spun some tale about how it was all a misunderstanding and how she was just trying to discipline my daughter out of love. My mom, bless her, has always been a bit too trusting. She asked if I was sure I wasn't overreacting. That stung. I had to explain again that Maddie had crossed a line you just don't cross. It took a lot to convince her, but eventually, she got it. In the midst of all this, my daughter's behavior started to change. She became clingy and wouldn't let me out of her sight. It broke my heart to see her like this. I knew I had to do something to make her feel safe again. So, I started a new routine. Every night, we'd sit down and talk about our day, just the two of us, and I'd reassure her that she was safe and loved. It seemed to help a little. Then, out of the blue, my landlord called. He'd heard about the fight and was worried about the type of people I was bringing around. I had to explain the whole situation, and thankfully he was understanding. But he made it clear that any more trouble and we'd have to find a new place to live. That was a wake-up call. I couldn't afford to move, not with everything else going on. Work was another story. My boss noticed I was off my game and pulled me aside. I ended up spilling everything. To my surprise, he was incredibly supportive. He even offered to give me some flexible hours so I could spend more time with my daughter. That was a small bit of good in all this mess, but the real kicker came when I was at the grocery store. I ran into one of Maddie's old friends, who casually mentioned that Maddie had been bad-mouthing me all over town, saying I was the one who had attacked her unprovoked. I was livid. I corrected her friend, told her the real story, and warned her that Maddie wasn't the victim she was pretending to be. After that, I decided to take legal action. I met with a lawyer, showed him all the evidence, and he said we had a strong case. It was a relief to know that I wasn't alone in this, that someone else saw Maddie for who she really was. Through all this, my daughter was my rock. She'd started to bounce back, her laughter filling the house again. It was like she knew we were fighting this battle together. And then, one evening, as we were sitting on the couch, she looked up at me and said, "Mommy, I'm happy you're my mommy." That moment right there made all the chaos worth it. I'm still dealing with the fallout from Maddie's betrayal, but I'm doing it with my head held high. I'm protecting my daughter and our little family, and I'm not letting anyone tear us down. Not now, not ever. Thank you for hearing me out. My business partner and father figure betrayed me by stealing my invention. So after 30 years, I watched him fail and refused to lend a helping hand when he came crawling back sick and desperate. I can't stress enough how great our relationship was for roughly 30 years. He was my best friend, and I worked with him for 7 years with 2 different businesses. While we worked together, I invented a product that we started to sell. It was relatively inexpensive to purchase, but he didn't want to pay me for any product or give me a percentage of his sales. In one instance, he took 3,000 units from me for free, told me he would pay for them, sold them, and I never saw a dime. He thought he was entitled to the money and treated me like his son, that owed him versus a supplier or partner. I was trying to build the business, but he was just focused on making a quick buck. I was sick of it and wanted a fair agreement in place so that he would stop taking advantage of me. But he always created these lopsided, one-sided contracts that I never saw as fair. So we never came to an agreement, and a rift started to form between us. He was selling more of the product at the time than I was, since I was trying a different approach, so he thought the business needed him more than it needed me. He sent me contracts that were clearly based on that fact. During this time, I had a baby, and he showed up 2.5 hours late to my son's first birthday party. We live only 45 minutes apart, so it was a big issue for me since I don't have a lot of family. I actually had no other family at the birthday. Then things changed for me. My product got on the news, and I made $15,000 in a day. I then made it onto a popular TV show, and within a year, I had over $1 million in sales. Now that the tables have turned, he wanted to create a fair contract. But at that point, I no longer wanted to be partners. I offered him a very good price on the product, but would no longer be giving them to him for free. He declined and started to sell a bootleg version of my product, but was telling his customers that it was authentic. When I got word of this, I was furious, and he just blamed me for not working with him. For years, we spoke rarely, and it often ended in a bad argument. He would make disparaging remarks against my wife because he was bitter. He has never met my youngest, who is now 8 years old. He did reach out a couple of years ago and asked to meet so we could talk. He gave me what I thought was a heartfelt apology and told me he was in a bad spot financially. I thought he was being sincere, so I drove him to my bank and gave him $2,500 so he wouldn't get evicted. He also said he wanted to meet his grandkids. Within 2 weeks, he asked me for $10,000 more and no mention of trying to see my kids. I told him I wasn't comfortable. He persisted and tried to make me feel guilty. I blocked him and haven't spoken to him in 4 years. He recently sent me a friend request on FB that I've left unanswered. Too much water has gone under the bridge and I don't trust him. Am I the idiot for not giving him another chance, or should I keep my distance? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot, and he is not a great father at all. He took advantage of you for his own gain with no consideration of your feelings. He cares more about the money than his own son family. He's only reaching out now and playing nice for the money. He used and exploited you, pure and simple. That is not a good father. That is an evil person. Don't ever contact him or give him money ever again. Decline the Facebook request because he's just looking for money again. Comment 2. This exact scenario happened with me. My dad ended up stealing over $1 million from me. He laughs about how he used it to buy a beach house. We have spoken once in 15 years, and I don't think we'll ever connect again. I was the son from the first marriage. I owed him my life for screwing up his youth in his eyes. You owe him nothing. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around. So much has happened since I last filled you in. Just when I thought things couldn't get more twisted, my old partner pulled a stunt that really got under my skin. He went behind my back and contacted my biggest distributor, spinning a tale about how he was still involved in the business and how he was facing tough times. Next thing I know, the distributor's calling me, asking if it's true and if they should cut him a deal. I was livid. I had to spend days smoothing things over, reassuring them that he had no part in my business anymore. But that wasn't the end of it. He somehow convinced my old mentor, someone I respected a lot, that I was the one who had wronged him. My mentor called me up saying I should be ashamed for turning my back on a friend. It was like a punch to the gut. I tried to explain, but my mentor wouldn't hear it. I lost not just a business contact, but someone I looked up to. Then, as if he hadn't done enough, he showed up at my house unannounced. My wife was home alone, and she called me at work, scared. He was going on about wanting to see his grandkids, saying it was his right. She told him to leave, but he just sat in his car outside for hours. It was creepy. When I got home, he was gone, but the damage was done. My wife was shaken, and I was furious. A week later, I found out he'd been spreading rumors about me in our industry, saying I'd stolen the product idea from him and that he was the brains behind everything. It was absurd. I had to spend countless hours on calls and meetings to set the record straight. It was exhausting, and I could feel the strain it was putting on my family. But here's where it gets really crazy. He filed a lawsuit against me, claiming he had rights to the product and its profits. It was baseless, but I had to hire a lawyer and prepare for a legal battle. The stress was unbelievable. I couldn't sleep, I was snapping at my kids, and my wife and I were arguing more than ever. The court date came, and it was a circus. He showed up with some half-baked evidence and a sob story about how he'd been wronged. But I had all the documentation, all the proof that the product was mine. The judge saw right through his act and dismissed the case. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But just when I thought I could breathe again, he did something unexpected. He reached out to my son on social media, trying to play the doting grandfather. My son, who's too young to understand the history, was confused and came to me with questions. I had to sit him down and try to explain why this man, who was technically his grandfather, wasn't a part of our lives. And now, the latest development. I found out he's been diagnosed with a serious illness. Part of me feels like it's just another ploy for sympathy, but another part wonders if it's true. He's been reaching out to mutual friends, telling them he's scared and alone. And they've been reaching out to me, suggesting I should let bygones be bygones and help him out. It's a mess. I'm torn between my anger and the part of me that remembers the good times we had before everything went sour. But I've been burned too many times. I can't just forget all the lies, the cheating, the manipulation. It's not just about me, it's about protecting my family. So here I am, trying to keep my head above water, dealing with the aftermath of his actions while trying to run a business and keep my family happy. It's a lot, and some days I don't know how I'm managing. But I am somehow. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!